Jake Reeves was elbow-deep in a malfunctioning gravity panel when his day got weird. Which, honestly, wasn't unusual on the Galactic Exchange Station. The station was basically a cosmic truck stop, where every species in the known galaxy stopped to refuel, resupply, and complain about the coffee. Jake had been working maintenance there for 3 years, and he'd learned 2 important things. Alien technology broke down just as often as human tech, and everyone had opinions about humans. He was wrestling with a particularly stubborn plasma coupling when he heard the pitter-patter of tiny feet. 6 tiny feet, to be exact. "Excuse me, Mr. Human." Jake looked down to find a small, fuzzy creature staring up at him with 6 enormous eyes. The kid Jake assumed it was a kid based on the size, and the backpack covered in cartoon stickers looked like someone had crossed a teddy bear with a potato and given it too many eyeballs. Adorable in that weird alien way. "Yeah, buddy," Jake said, not looking up from his work. "I'm kind of in the middle of something. Why don't humans have claws?" Jake paused, plasma wrench hovering in midair. It was such an innocent question, asked with such genuine curiosity, that he almost felt bad about what was about to happen. Because inevitably, whenever someone asked questions about human biology in public, someone else had to chime in with their expert opinion. "Oh, for the love of the great nest," came a sharp nasal voice from behind them. "Is this human bothering you, young Pip?" And there it was. Creech swooped down from the upper walkway, his iridescent feathers catching the station's artificial light. He was a Aviskor, which meant he looked like someone had taken a parrot, stretched it to human height, given it an attitude problem, and sent it to law school. He was also Jake's co-worker, which was unfortunate for everyone involved. "I'm not bothering anyone," Jake muttered. "I'm fixing the panel that keeps the station from becoming a floating death trap. You're welcome, by the way." Creech ignored him completely, crouching down to address Pip with exaggerated concern. "You see, little one, humans are what we call a soft prey species. They have no natural defenses whatsoever. No claws, no fangs, no venom, no armor plating. They're basically mobile snacks that got lucky." "Hey," Jake said. "It's true," Creech continued, warming to his subject. He extended one wing, and razor-sharp talons glinted in the light. "My species evolved proper weapons. We can hunt, defend ourselves, survive without needing to hide behind tools and technology. Humans," he clicked his beak dismissively, "they survived by accident. Climbed into caves, banged rocks together, and somehow stumbled their way to space travel. Quite sad, really." Pip's 6 eyes swiveled between Creech and Jake, processing this information. Jake set down his plasma wrench. He stood up slowly, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit, and looked at Creech with the kind of smile that usually preceded either brilliance or disaster. "Kid," Jake said, addressing Pip directly, "we didn't need claws. We invented better ones." Creech's feathers ruffled. "Oh, please. Invented? You can't invent your way out of evolutionary inadequacy. Want to bet?" The words hung in the air like a challenge, which, Jake realized immediately, was probably a mistake. But he was committed now, and backing down would mean enduring Creech's smug lectures for the next 6 months. "Bet?" Creech's beak curved into what might have been a smile. "What exactly are you proposing, maintenance human?" Before Jake could answer, a deep, rumbling voice echoed across the corridor. Did someone say bet? They all turned to see Shellback lumbering toward them. The station's security chief was a Crystarian, which meant he was basically a 7-foot-tall lobster with an attitude and a badge. He also had a notorious gambling problem. "Jake here thinks human inventions are better than natural weapons," Creech explained, his tone dripping with condescension. Shellback's eye stalks swiveled with interest. "Is that so? Well, we've got a nice empty cargo bay on Deck 7. Why don't you two give us a demonstration?" His mandibles clicked together in what might have been anticipation. "I'll even make it interesting. Take odds on whether the feather duster or the squishy human makes a better case." "I'm standing right here," Jake said. "I know," Shellback replied. 2-to-1 odds on Creech. Any takers?" And that's how, 15 minutes later, Jake found himself standing in Cargo Bay 7, wondering if his ego had finally written a check his body couldn't cash. Word traveled fast on the Galactic Exchange Station. Faster than light speed, actually, which Jake was pretty sure violated at least 3 laws of physics. By the time he'd grabbed his toolbox from the maintenance locker and made his way to Cargo Bay 7, half the station's off-duty crew had already assembled. There were Glorfians clustered in the corner, their gelatinous bodies quivering with anticipation. A group of Zentari engineers had abandoned their posts, their crystalline forms refracting the cargo bay lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. Even old Mog from the cafeteria had wheeled out a cart of snacks. Because apparently, Watching the human potentially humiliate himself was premium entertainment. "This is ridiculous," Jake muttered, setting down his toolbox with a metallic thunk. "Agreed," said Creech, who had changed into what could only be described as athletic wear. It was a vest that showed off his wings and talons to maximum effect. He'd even preened his feathers. "This won't take long at all." Pip had secured a front row spot, sitting cross-legged with a datapad, apparently ready to take notes. The kid's 6 eyes were wide with excitement. Shellback raised his massive claws for attention. "All right, settle down, settle down. Here's how this works." Creech demonstrates his species' natural advantages. Then Jake shows us whatever's in that sad little toolbox of his. We'll let the crowd decide who makes the better case. Keep it clean, keep it safe, and keep it entertaining. I've got 300 credits riding on this. "You bet against me?" Jake asked. "Nothing personal. I've seen you fix things. You're competent. But you're also the guy who got stuck in a ventilation shaft last month because you thought it was a shortcut. That was one time. You were stuck for 4 hours. Can we just start?" Creech interrupted, stretching his wings. The span was impressive, Jake had to admit. Nearly 12 feet from tip to tip. "I'd like to finish before my shift ends." Shellback gestured magnanimously. "Floor's yours, Feathers." Creech stepped into the center of the cargo bay like he was taking the stage at the galaxy's most prestigious theater. He turned slowly, making sure everyone got a good look at him. "Behold," he announced, his voice carrying across the bay with practiced ease. "Millions of years of evolutionary perfection." He extended his talons. They were curved, serrated, and looked sharp enough to split atoms. With a casual swipe, he approached one of the cargo containers, a standard Durasteel crate rated for deep space transport. His talons went through the side panel like it was tissue paper, leaving 4 perfectly parallel gashes in the metal. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Someone started a slow clap. "These talons can cut through most known materials," Creech explained, examining his claws with obvious pride. "They're self-sharpening, never dull, and are integrated directly into my skeletal structure. No maintenance required. Can't lose them. Can't forget them at home." Jake had to admit, it was a good opening move, but Creech wasn't done. He directed Shellback to kill the cargo bay lights. The space plunged into darkness, and Jake heard several species gasp. Then Creech began to sing, if you could call it singing. It was more like a series of high-pitched clicks and chirps that bounced off the walls. "Echolocation." Creech's voice came from somewhere in the darkness. "I can navigate perfectly in zero visibility. I can detect objects as small as a coin from 50 meters away. I don't need lights, sensors, or expensive equipment." The lights came back on. Creech was now perched on top of a stack of crates, 20 feet in the air. He spread his wings dramatically. And of course, flight. True, biological flight. No fuel required, no mechanical failures, no risk of crashes due to technical malfunctions. Just me, my wings, and the freedom of 3-dimensional movement. He dove from the crates, swooped low over the crowd, causing several species to duck, and landed gracefully next to Jake. He wasn't even breathing hard. "So," Creech said, folding his wings with a flourish, "let's see what your species has to offer. Maintenance human. What did you bring? A hammer? A flashlight?" He clicked his beak in what was definitely alien laughter. "Perhaps some duct tape?" The crowd chuckled. Even Pip looked slightly worried, his 6 eyes darting between Jake and Creech. Jake stood there for a moment, hands in his pockets, looking utterly unbothered. Which was largely an act, because internally he was running calculations on whether he could pull this off without ending up as a station-wide meme. Then he smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, knowing curve of his lips that suggested he knew something Creech didn't. "Nice performance," Jake said casually. He walked over to his toolbox and flipped it open. "Really impressive stuff. Millions of years of evolution, you said?" "That's correct." "Must be nice," Jake said, pulling out a simple multi-tool. "Having to wait millions of years for an upgrade." He held up the multi-tool, letting it catch the light. "Humans, we just hit the hardware store." Shellback's eye stalks perked up with interest. In the corner, someone adjusted their bet on their datapad. Jake cracked his knuckles. "Let me show you what 3,000 years of annoyed engineering students can accomplish." Jake walked over to the damaged cargo crate, the one Creech had so dramatically shredded. He knelt down, examining the 4 parallel gashes with the critical eye of someone who'd spent years fixing things that other people had broken. "Okay," Jake said, mostly to himself. "So you can cut metal, that's cool. Very impressive. Probably felt great too, didn't it? Just slashing through stuff?" Creech preened slightly. It was effortless. Right. Effortless. But here's the thing about cutting stuff. Jake flipped open his multi-tool, extending a small precision blade. It's only useful if you're trying to destroy something. What if you need to, I don't know, actually fix it? He went to work on the crate. The multi-tool had a dozen attachments, and Jake cycled through them with practiced ease. A screwdriver to remove the damaged panel. A small prying tool to pop out the dented frame. A wire cutter to snip away the compromised edges. Within 3 minutes, he'd removed the destroyed section completely. "See, your claws made a mess," Jake explained, pulling out a small welding torch from his toolbox. "Very dramatic, but useless for anyone who actually has to clean up afterward. This?" He ignited the torch and began sealing a replacement panel he'd grabbed from the spare parts bin. "This is precise, controlled. And when I'm done, the crate will actually be functional again." The crowd leaned in, watching the bright blue flame dance across the metal. Jake worked quickly, his movements economical and efficient. 2 minutes later, the crate looked almost new. Better than new. Actually, the replacement panel was shinier than the original. "Claws are great if you're a predator," Jake said, snapping the torch off. "But humans, we're builders. We don't just tear things apart. We take them apart, figure out how they work, and put them back together better than before. Can't do that with claws." A few murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Pip was scribbling furiously on his datapad. Creech ruffled his feathers, clearly annoyed. "Fine. You have tools. Congratulations. But what about sensory advantages? Your species is practically blind in the dark." "Blind?" Jake reached into his toolbox and pulled out a standard-issue flashlight. Not fancy, nothing special, just a cylinder with a button. He clicked it on. The beam was so bright that half the crowd flinched. It cut through the cargo bay like a searchlight, illuminating every corner, every crevice, every dust particle floating in the air. "Your echolocation works for about 50 meters, right?" Jake asked, pointing the beam at the far wall, easily 100 meters away. "This? This works as far as the light can travel, which, in space, is pretty much forever." He clicked it off and pulled out a second device. "And if I need echolocation specifically, well, we invented sonar, and radar, and LiDAR, and about 15 other detection systems, each one optimized for different situations." He tossed the sonar detector to Creech, who caught it reflexively. "That one cost me 40 credits at the station supply store. Works better than your biological version. Has a range of 300 meters, and if it breaks, I can buy another one. If your echolocation breaks, you're just deaf." Creech's beak opened, then closed. He set the detector down carefully. "And the flight thing," Jake continued, warming to his subject. He was starting to enjoy this. "Yeah, wings are great. Very majestic. But they have limitations, don't they? Atmosphere required, energy expenditure, weight restrictions. You can't carry much while flying, can you?" "I can carry reasonable loads. Define reasonable." Jake didn't wait for an answer. He walked back to his toolbox and pulled out what looked like a compact backpack with handles. "This is a Type 7 personal mobility unit. We call it a jetpack because personal atmospheric and zero-G propulsion system doesn't roll off the tongue." He strapped it on, made a few adjustments to the controls, and gently lifted off the ground. No running start, no wing flapping. Just smooth, controlled ascent. He rose to the same height as Creech's earlier perch, then rotated in place, completely stable. "Works in atmosphere, works in vacuum, works in zero-G," Jake called down. "Maximum load capacity, 200 kilograms. Flight time, 6 hours on a standard charge. And the best part? He descended slowly, landing with barely a sound. If I get tired, I just land and take it off. You're stuck with those wings whether you want them or not." The crowd was really paying attention now. Shellback's eye stalks were fully extended, watching every move. Even the Glorfians had stopped jiggling. Jake unstrapped the jetpack and set it down. "See, here's what humans figured out early on. Biological evolution is slow. Really, really slow. It takes thousands of generations to develop new traits, and you're stuck with whatever random mutations happen to work. But us? We iterate." He gestured to his toolbox. "Every single thing in here is version something. This multi-tool, version 43. The flashlight, version 206. The jetpack, that's 8th generation tech, and the 9th is already in beta testing. We don't wait for evolution to maybe give us an advantage in a million years. We invent the advantage on Tuesday and improve it by Friday." Pip's 6 eyes were enormous now, reflecting the cargo bay lights like disco balls. The kid was completely transfixed. Creech was less impressed. This is all very clever, I'm sure, but you're missing the fundamental point. These are external tools. Crutches. You're dependent on them. If you lose them, you're helpless. My advantages are permanent. Built in. I am always armed, always capable. Jake grinned. It was the grin of someone who'd been waiting for exactly that argument. Always capable? Okay, let's test that. Jake pulled out his datapad and tapped a few commands. Hey, Shellback. You mind if I simulate some hostile environments? Nothing dangerous, just a little scenario testing. Shellback's mandibles clicked with amusement. Cargo bay environmental controls are all yours. This just got interesting. Wait, what are you doing? Creech's feathers ruffled nervously. Just proving a point, Jake said cheerfully. He tapped his datapad again, and the cargo bay's temperature began to drop. Fast. Within 30 seconds, frost was forming on the walls. The temperature display on the wall read -15 and falling. Creech immediately began shivering. His species was tropical in origin, adapted for warm climates. His feathers puffed up in a desperate attempt to retain heat, but he was clearly struggling. Jake, meanwhile, calmly reached into his toolbox and pulled out a thermal jacket. He shrugged it on, zipped it up, and stood there looking perfectly comfortable. The problem with biological evolution, Jake explained, his breath misting in the frigid air, is that it specializes you for specific environments. Your species evolved on a warm planet with a specific atmospheric composition and gravity level, which means you're great in those conditions. But throw you somewhere else? He gestured at Creech's shivering form. Not so much. This is hardly fair, Creech stammered through chattering beak. Life's not fair, that's why we brought jackets. Jake tapped his datapad again, and the temperature returned to normal. Humans evolved in East Africa. Warm, dry, savanna climate. You know where we live now? Literally everywhere. Arctic tundra, desert planets, space stations, underwater habitats. We've got humans living in places that would kill them in minutes without technology. Because we don't adapt to the environment, we adapt the environment to us. Or, we just wear the right gear. Creech was recovering, his feathers slowly settling back down. But before he could formulate a response, there was a commotion at the cargo bay entrance. I heard my cousin was demonstrating biological superiority. A new voice screeched across the bay. Oh no. A second Aviskor swooped in, this one slightly larger than Creech, with darker plumage and an even more aggressive attitude. Shriek was Creech's cousin, and if Creech was annoying, Shriek was insufferable. Shriek, this isn't necessary, Creech began. Nonsense. This soft little mammal needs to understand the true power of evolved predators. Shriek landed next to Creech and immediately extended a row of spines along his wings. They glistened with something that was definitely not water. Venomous quills, paralytic toxin. One touch and most species are down for hours. Okay, getting a little concerning now, Jake muttered. And that's not all. Shriek's eyes began to glow red. Literally glow. Heat vision, apparently. A nearby crate started to smoke where his gaze lingered. Shellback stepped forward, one claw on his sidearm. All right, let's keep this non-lethal. It's fine, Jake said, holding up a hand. He was rummaging through his toolbox with the energy of someone who was either very confident or very stupid. Possibly both. You want to escalate? Let's escalate. He pulled out a standard fire extinguisher, the kind you'd find in any maintenance closet. Shriek actually laughed. What are you going to do? Spray me with foam? Yep. Jake pulled the pin and aimed the nozzle. A blast of compressed CO2 and fire-retardant foam shot out, hitting Shriek square in the chest. The Aviskor squawked in surprise, his heat vision sputtering out as the foam covered his face and wings. Fire extinguisher, Jake explained calmly, still spraying. Invented because humans kept accidentally setting things on fire, then decided the solution was a portable fire-canceling device. Doubles as a non-lethal weapon, a propulsion system in 0G, and apparently an anti-heat vision defense. Who knew? Shriek was flailing now, trying to wipe foam from his eyes. Creech was helping his cousin, shooting Jake a look that could have melted steel. And as for the poison quills, Jake set down the extinguisher and pulled out what looked like a clear plastic panel. Basic polycarbonate shield. Weighs 2 kilograms, stops most projectiles, and cost me 60 credits. Your quills are biological, which means limited ammunition. This? He tapped the shield. This I can buy in bulk. The crowd was eating this up. Shellback had given up even pretending to be official and was openly cheering. Mog was selling refreshments at markup prices. Jake was on a roll now. He pulled out a welding torch, Portable fire. A compact energy shield generator he'd borrowed from engineering. Portable force field. A medical scanner. Portable X-ray vision. A grappling hook. Portable climbing. With each item, he demonstrated its use, his explanations getting increasingly sarcastic. See, here's what you two don't get. Every advantage you have? We looked at it and said, that's neat, but what if we could do it better, and also take it off when it's inconvenient? He held up the grappling hook. You can fly. Great. I can fly, climb, swing, rappel, and fish, all with the same device. And if I'm somewhere with low ceilings where wings are a liability, I just put it away. He pulled out a handheld scanning device. You have enhanced senses. Cool. We have sensors that can detect radiation, chemical composition, life signs, structural integrity, and what you had for breakfast. All in something smaller than your head. Pip was scribbling so fast his datapad was smoking. Humans are basically modular, Jake continued, gesturing to his collection of tools spread across the cargo bay floor. We're the only species that looked at our basic model bodies and said, you know what? Let's make ourselves upgradable. We're like a starter kit. Everything else? We add as needed. Creech, having finally cleaned the foam off his cousin, stepped forward. His feathers were still ruffled, his pride clearly damaged, but there was something different in his eyes now. Maybe respect, maybe just fear of further humiliation. Fine, Creech said quietly. You've made your point. Humans have tools. Congratulations. Oh, I'm not done yet, Jake said, but his tone was gentler now, less sarcastic. He walked over to where Pip was sitting and crouched down to the kid's level. Come here, buddy. Let me tell you what this is really about. Jake sat down cross-legged on the cargo bay floor, right next to Pip. The little fuzzy alien looked up at him with all 6 eyes wide, datapad clutched in his tiny hands like it contained the secrets of the universe. You asked why humans don't have claws, Jake said, his voice losing the performative edge it had carried during the demonstration. And Creech gave you the evolutionary answer. We're soft. No natural weapons. No armor. No venom. He's not wrong about that. Creech shifted uncomfortably in the background but didn't interrupt. But here's what he missed, Jake continued. We don't have claws because we evolved something way more dangerous. He held up his hands, wiggling his fingers. These. Hands with opposable thumbs. You know what these can do? Everything. We can grip. We can manipulate. We can create. These hands can perform surgery, paint a masterpiece, assemble a starship, or punch you in the face if necessary. They're the most versatile biological tool in the known galaxy. Pip reached out and gently touched Jake's hand with one of his own paws, comparing them. But hands are just the hardware, Jake said. The real weapon is up here. He tapped his temple. Human brains are wired for problem solving, obsessively. Like, to an unhealthy degree, we see a problem and we can't leave it alone. We poke it. We study it. We tear it apart and rebuild it just to see if we can do it better. He picked up his multi-tool, turning it over in his palm. Every tool here represents a problem someone solved. The knife? Someone needed to cut things but didn't have claws, so they made a blade. The screwdriver? Someone needed to fasten things together more securely than their hands allowed, so they invented screws and the tools to drive them. The flashlight? Someone was tired of being afraid of the dark, so they bottled light and made it portable. Each tool is a solved problem, Pip said softly, his voice filled with wonder. Exactly, Jake grinned. And here's the beautiful part. Once one human solves a problem, we share the solution. We write it down, we teach it, we improve on it. Every tool in this box represents thousands of years of humans standing on each other's shoulders, each generation making things a little bit better. He spread his arms, gesturing to all the equipment scattered around them. Creech says his advantages are built in, and he's right. But you know what that means? He's stuck with them. If talons become obsolete, if there's a better way to do things, too bad. He's got to wait another 1,000,000 years for evolution to maybe catch up. Jake picked up the jetpack. But this? Version 8. Version 9 is already being tested. Version 10 is in the design phase. In 5 years, this will be outdated. In 10 years, it'll be in museums. Humans don't wait for biology to catch up. We iterate, we upgrade. We're never satisfied with good enough. Shellback lumbered closer, his massive form casting a shadow over them. That's actually terrifying when you think about it, he rumbled. Most species reach a technological plateau. They find what works and stick with it for centuries. Humans can't sit still, Jake confirmed. We're pathologically incapable of leaving well enough alone. It's our blessing and our curse. We invented the wheel. Then immediately, he started asking how to make it roll faster. He pulled Pip's datapad closer and started scrolling through the notes the kid had taken. You've been writing down all the tools I showed you. That's good. But here's what you really need to understand. These aren't just tools. They're proof of concept. Every single one started with a human looking at their weak, soft, clawless body and saying, "This is unacceptable. I'm going to fix this." Jake stood up, offering his hand to help Pip to his feet. The small alien took it, steadying himself on wobbly legs. "Your species probably evolved perfectly fine natural advantages," Jake said. "And Creech's species definitely did. You're both probably way better adapted to your home environments than humans are to anything. But humans? We decided our environment was negotiable. We looked at a universe that gave us fragile bodies and said, you know what? We'll just build detachable advantages we can swap out as needed." He walked over to his toolbox and closed it with a satisfying click. Every species gets dealt a hand by evolution. Random mutations, survival of the fittest, millions of years of incremental changes. It's slow, it's inefficient, and it locks you into whatever body plan worked well enough to survive. Jake hoisted the toolbox onto his shoulder. We just decided to build our own cards instead. And then we built a factory to mass-produce better cards. And then we built a research facility to design even better cards. And we're never going to stop, because stopping isn't in our nature. Creech stepped forward, and for the first time since the demonstration began, he didn't look smug or condescending. He looked thoughtful, maybe even a little impressed. "I may have been hasty in my assessment," Creech said carefully, each word clearly difficult for him. "About humans being lucky accidents." "We are lucky accidents," Jake said with a shrug. "Just like every other species in the galaxy. The difference is we looked at our luck and decided to hack the system." "That's frighteningly accurate," Shellback muttered. Pip tugged on Jake's sleeve. "So humans are scary because you keep getting better?" "No, kid. Humans are scary because we're never satisfied with better. We always want best. And when we achieve best, we immediately start working on better than best." Jake grinned. "We're basically running a permanent arms race against the concept of good enough." The crowd had gone quiet, processing this. Even the Glorfians had stopped jiggling. "Also," Jake added, unable to resist, "we're paranoid. Which brings me to my favorite part." Pip looked up at Jake with all 6 eyes blinking in sequence. A gesture that Jake had learned meant the little alien was processing something important. The cargo bay had gone quiet, the entertainment value of the demonstration fading into something more thoughtful. "But Mr. Jake," Pip said, his small voice carrying in the silence, "what if you lose your tools? What if your toolbox breaks, or you drop it, or someone steals it? Then you're just soft again, right?" It was an innocent question. A logical question. The kind of question that would occur to any species that relied on built-in advantages. If your weapons were detachable, what happened when they got detached? Creech's feathers perked up slightly. Even in defeat, he couldn't resist the opportunity to point out a flaw. "The child raises a valid concern. For all your talk of inventions and upgrades, you're still dependent on external equipment. Lose it, and you're defenseless." Jake's grin widened into something that made several species in the crowd take an involuntary step backward. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this question. The smile of someone who had an answer prepared, rehearsed, and thoroughly field-tested. "Lose my tools?" Jake said, his voice dripping with theatrical concern. "Oh no, whatever would I do?" He reached down to his boot. The standard-issue maintenance work boot that every human on the station wore. He pressed a small hidden panel on the side, and a compartment popped open. From inside, he pulled out a compact multi-tool. Not the same model as the one he'd been using. Smaller, sleeker, different features. "Backup number 1, Jake announced, holding it up for everyone to see. Pip's eyes went even wider, which Jake hadn't thought was physically possible. "But wait," Jake continued in the tone of a commercial salesman. "There's more." He reached into his jacket pocket. Out came another multi-tool. This one was credit card thin, designed to slip into a wallet. "Backup number 2. From his other jacket pocket, he pulled out a small penlight flashlight, a folding knife, and a compressed emergency shelter kit no bigger than a deck of cards. "Backups 3, 4, and 5. He unzipped a side pocket on his cargo pants. Inside was a miniature first aid kit, a fire-starting tool, and what looked like a length of high-tensile cord that could probably support a small shuttle. 6, 7, and 8. Creech's beak had fallen open. Shriek had stopped preening entirely. Oh, and this! Jake lifted his left arm, showing off his standard-issue datapad strapped to his wrist. This has schematics for approximately 4,000 different tools, machines, and devices stored in local memory. That's not even counting what I can access from the station's database. If I lost every single physical tool, I could fabricate new ones from raw materials using any of the station's 3 industrial printers. Which, by the way, I have administrative access to because someone needed to maintain them, and I was the only one who volunteered to learn how. He tapped the datapad screen, and it lit up with scrolling lists of files. Want to know what's really fun? These schematics are cross-referenced and indexed. I can search by function, by material requirements, by fabrication time. I can also modify existing designs, or create new ones on the fly. The entire accumulated tool-making knowledge of human civilization, accessible from my wrist. Pip was frantically scribbling on his datapad again, his small paws moving in a blur. But let's say something catastrophic happens, Jake continued, clearly enjoying himself now. Let's say I lose the toolbox. I lose all my backup tools, my datapad gets destroyed, and I'm stranded somewhere with no fabrication equipment. What then? He walked over to a cargo crate and knocked on it with his knuckles. Then I improvise. That's the other thing about humans. We don't just use tools. We make tools from whatever's available. This crate? I could disassemble it and turn it into a shelter, a weapon, a flotation device, or about 15 other things given 20 minutes and motivation. He picked up a piece of random scrap metal from the floor, probably debris from Creech's earlier Talon demonstration. This is trash right now. But in human hands, this could be a blade, a pry bar, a hammer, a digging implement, a signal mirror, a heat reflector, the list goes on. Jake tossed the scrap to Pip, who caught it awkwardly. Humans have been making tools from rocks and sticks for hundreds of thousands of years. It's literally how we survived long enough to invent starships. You think losing a multi-tool is going to stop us? We'll just make another one. From debris, while actively being chased by predators. And then we'll use that improvised tool to turn the tables on whatever was chasing us. Shellback's mandibles clicked rapidly, his species equivalent of nervous laughter. You know, when you put it like that, I'm remembering why most species were terrified when humans first showed up in the galactic community. Oh, the paranoia doesn't stop at physical tools, Jake said, warming to his subject. You want to know what else we back up? Knowledge. We have redundant data storage on every human vessel and station. Multiple copies, different formats, different locations. We have libraries, both digital and physical. We have oral traditions. We have songs and stories specifically designed to preserve critical information across generations. He pointed at his head again. And we back up the knowledge in here too. I know how to start a fire without tools, how to purify water, how to navigate by stars, how to identify edible plants, how to set a broken bone, how to build a basic shelter. All of that is just stored in my brain. Stuff we teach kids before they're old enough to use power tools. Why? Creech asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice now. Why be so obsessively redundant? Because we're terrified, Jake said simply. The humor dropped from his voice, replaced by something more serious. Humans are scared of being helpless. We evolved as prey animals who figured out how to fight back, and we never forgot what it was like to be vulnerable. So we over-prepare. We plan for contingencies. We make backups of our backups. We assume everything will go wrong, and we prepare accordingly. He gestured around the cargo bay, at all the equipment, all the watching species. Every tool I showed you today, it exists because some human, somewhere, had something go wrong and decided it would never happen again. The fire extinguisher exists because buildings burned down. The medical scanner exists because people died of preventable diseases. The jetpack exists because someone fell and decided gravity was negotiable. Jake walked back to Pip and knelt down again, meeting the kid at eye level. You asked why humans don't have claws. The real answer? We don't have claws because we have something better. We have hands that can build anything, brains that never stop solving problems, and an absolute refusal to accept limitations. We looked at a universe full of species with natural weapons and armor and venom, and we said, that's cute. We'll just make our own. He reached into one more pocket seriously. How many pockets did his jumpsuit have? And pulled out a tiny, cheap plastic multi-tool that probably cost 1 credit at a discount store. He pressed it into Pip's paw. Here, your first human tool. Keep it with you. And remember, it's not about the tool itself. It's about what it represents. Every time you look at it, remember that you don't have to accept the limitations you were born with. You can build solutions. You can iterate. You can improve. Pip clutched the tiny multi-tool like it was made of precious metals, all 6 eyes shimmering with what might have been tears. I want to be human when I grow up. Kid, you don't have to be human, Jake said with a gentle smile. You just have to think like one. Ask why not, instead of why. Look at problems as opportunities. And always keep a backup multi-tool in your boot. The crowd erupted into applause. Even Creech was slow clapping, his beak curved in what might have been genuine respect. Shriek had slunk off to clean more foam from his feathers, his pride thoroughly demolished. Shellback lumbered over, his eye stalk swiveling between Jake and Creech. Well, I think we have a clear winner. Also, I lost 300 credits, so thanks for that, Jake. Any time, Jake said, hoisting his toolbox back onto his shoulder. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a gravity panel to finish fixing. Because unlike some species, humans actually maintain our infrastructure. That was one time, Creech protested. And it wasn't even my fault. It was absolutely your fault. As Jake walked toward the cargo bay exit, Pip waddled after him, still clutching the multi-tool and data pad. Mr. Jake, can I help you fix the panel? I want to learn. Jake paused, looking down at the eager little alien. Then he smiled, a real smile this time, not the theatrical one he'd been wearing during the demonstration. Sure, kid. First lesson in human engineering. Always bring more tools than you think you'll need. Why? Because something's definitely going to break. Behind them, the crowd dispersed, chattering excitedly in a dozen different languages. Mog was counting his profits from snack sales. Shellback was grumbling about lost bets but looking thoroughly entertained. And Creech stood in the middle of the cargo bay, surrounded by foam-covered equipment and damaged crates, staring at his talons with what might have been existential uncertainty. Jake and Pip walked through the station corridors, the human rattling off lessons about torque specifications and safety protocols, while the small alien absorbed every word, like his life depended on it. Somewhere in the station, an alert chimed. Another mechanical failure, another problem that needed solving. Jake grinned. Just another day of being human in a galaxy that was still figuring out that soft, clawless prey species who brought their own advantages to every fight. And that was exactly how humanity liked it.